Hey now, happy vibes, my friends. Welcome back to my podcast, Vibes by Alicia, where I believe in spreading killer vibes that light you up and give you that kick in the ass to craft the life you wish to live. This sacred space is dedicated to the lovers of all things business, travel, and lifestyle. Hey, it's about time you get the scoop on the latest vibes. So let's get to it. Guys, so today I have the pleasure of presenting to you someone that I've been following for a while online. I think it's been maybe 5 years now that I've been following you. And I've been to your events, I've been to your workshops, and I think I've been kind of going to them just to find that place for me, that community, which is something we're going to talk about. So I want to present to you all my friend and my colleague, Ozeal DeBastos. Am I saying it correctly?
That's perfect.
Okay. Where's the last name from, by the way?
It's Spanish.
It's Spanish.
It's Spanish. But,
okay. It sounded Portuguese to me.
Portuguese, yeah.
Is it Portuguese?
It's not. It's
Spanish.
It's in Spanish.
Awesome.
Checked, yeah.
So Ozeal, you're a podcaster. You're a podcast consultant. You're the founder of Ozeal Media. Since the launch of your podcast, No Permission Needed, which I love that title. I love it because I don't need permission from anybody. In 2017, your show has garnered iTunes coveted new and noteworthy designation. Awesome. As well as a position on Apple's top 50 business podcast list. Wow. Your podcast, No Permission Needed, has an undisputed 5-star rating and over 1 million downloads. Damn. That's super cool and awesome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor for somebody who's seen you go from idea to now season 6 and seeing you everything that you've done with podcasting. It's a true honor. It's been pretty amazing just to see your journey, Alicia. So proud of you.
It's, something that I had been wanting to do for a while.
I know.
But I think I was just suffering from the imposter syndrome. I do suffer from that because, from my upbringing and all the things that I'm able to do and all the things, I have to push myself out of my comfort zone.
We all do.
I have to really be super committed to me and my vision. And I'm the perfectionist. I want everything to be perfect. I want things to be, done at the highest levels. Like my standards are super high in everything that I do. And if I was going to do podcasting, I needed to do that. I needed to have that. But you had a conversation with me one time, because I did say this to you one time. I was there at one of your workshops and you were like, don't wait. It's never going to be that way for you. And if you keep waiting and you keep postponing it, you're never going to get to it. And it's something you've always wanted to do.
A lot of my clients struggle with this. And I say that ready is a feeling. Right? People say, okay, I need to be ready. But let me backtrack. Ready is not a feeling, it's a decision.
Okay.
So when you decide to say, hey, I'm going to start this thing, this podcast, this YouTube channel, you are not allowing a feeling to determine the destination. You are allowing that decision to say, I'm going to give myself permission to start this thing and put it out there, and the imperfect start and just doing it and putting it out there and then learning as you grow, right? You can't grow without getting in the trenches, without getting into the waters. So it's something, Alicia, that a lot of, and I remember you asking me that question in one of the live workshops, a lot of creators, a lot of individuals deal with imposter syndrome. Yeah,
and I think it's the idea for me of like, okay, who wants to listen to me? Who do I think I am that I have, things to impart to, like who am I to think that this audio platform is something that needs to be out there for me and for someone to listen to me, my audience, like listeners, like people who want to know, like, who am I? Who do I think I am, I think it's that feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of creators deal with this challenge, this mentality. But I always say this, Alicia, and as a matter of fact, I shot a video recently. And it was, and I'm going to share this with your listeners and yourself, is that you are the medicine. You are the medicine to someone's struggle, someone's challenge.
Yes.
And I think that we often undermine ourselves and say, my voice is not capable because I'm unknown, or I'm just a local girl living here in Houston. Nobody, how is this going to have any impact? But you are the medicine. And anybody who's listened to this, who's on the fence of starting a podcast, you can help and make a positive impact on someone who needs to hear that message, who needs to hear that personal experience of yours, because we all have lessons that we've learned.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's
everybody
something,
has a story.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of podcasting, is it gives a platform for an individual voice to make a breakthrough and really make an impact on someone else's life.
You know, and then when COVID hit and I closed my store, because I had my store for about 5 years, I saw it as like the moment that kind of just told me, you know, time is fleeing. People are here one day, the next day they're not. And why am I waiting around? Why am I waiting for something or for someone to give me that permission? No permission needed. Your podcast. Nobody needs to give me permission to get started and get going. But in my mind, I needed to give myself that permission. I needed to tell myself that I was ready and I could do it. And that I didn't have to wait. It wasn't, you said it, the imperfect start. It's perfectly fine. It is imperfect and it's not going to be perfect. And I need to start living with that. But it's something that I just hold myself to. Like for me, if I'm going to do this podcast, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to do it and I'm going to follow through on it and be super consistent with it. I noticed that there's a lot of other podcasters and a lot of women that were starting at the same time as I did, and they haven't published in a long time. And I can understand that, because it is sometimes a little bit of a struggle to come up with the content, the ideas, the guests. And so for me, I'm really grateful that you did say that to me a few times. It had to be a few times until it finally hit me. Like, okay, stop it. Stop it with the nonsense. Like, you're being so ridiculous. I'm always the one that's boosting people's confidence. Why can't I boost my own confidence, right? Like, I'm the hardest person. Like, I punish myself the hardest. I'm the hardest on me, right? Criticism. I can't even listen to myself sometimes because I can't like stand my voice. Maybe you hear that from your clients. Do they have that same?
I do. So part of the mental challenge and everything you just said, as far as being challenged by the self-sabotage, right? The imposter syndrome. The other thing is just, people getting, this is our first time. A lot of people went to broadcasting school, and we're creators and leaders who are stepping behind the mic for the first time. And we have no skill set of like how to handle equipment or how to interview and how to really project the message out into a microphone.
Yeah.
And, we're listening to ourselves for the first time, and it could be very daunting. I actually had a client last year who actually had a couple, but this one last year recently who was really struggling with the tone of her voice. She could not stand it to a point to where she said, I know I need to edit these episodes, but I can't listen to my voice. And as a matter of fact, I'm like this close to quitting, because that's how bad I think my voice sounds. That. So, we went through some exercises, and it was the mindset is the game. And we were able to go through it. And
I agree.
She's crushing it. And now she's embraced her voice, and it just takes time. I tell her it just takes time, and everybody else's voice and cadence sounds different, but that's what makes you unique. Like the beautiful thing about personal branding and voice is that you have to embrace your uniqueness and exploit that for serving others. And once you embrace that voice and you really understand, this is my voice, this is my tone, I have a deeper voice, you have a higher voice, you have a different energy. But that's what makes Alicia.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this other podcaster them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something, it's something that it's very challenging for a lot of new podcasters.
Yeah, for sure. So when you started your podcast, what was your goal for starting yours, for example? What inspired you to start it?
I love that question. So, I spent the bulk of my 20s and even early 30s in music. I was I was a musician, a singer, songwriter, MC. I rapped in this hip hop live band. And I struggled. And I saw my father, and really, if you want to peel back the layer a bit, I saw my father. He was also super talented musician, singer, songwriter, played all instruments. But I saw this struggling artist, where they were hustling, they were working, so talented. And I saw my friends struggle, and then I started going through it.
Yeah.
So I understood early on that to be a successful independent artist or be a successful musician, there was many moving parts of having a successful career. That talent was really a small percentage. The other things are branding, marketing,
right?
Really understanding business, the numbers, right? The business of music. So I fell in love with the marketing and branding side of music.
Okay.
So I started getting into that world of online marketing and getting into that's when things were shifting. So once the last band broke up, I wanted to start a podcast that would help creatives, creative, entrepreneurial minded individuals, help them learn about branding, teaching them about marketing themselves and how to build their own platform so they can voice and share it to the world effectively. So that was pretty much the impetus behind the podcast. And I was able to interview some of the most brilliant thought leaders in marketing and branding, and digital marketing, et cetera. And it was really just fun just to be able to do that and create a platform for other creatives to learn.
Yeah, but you mentioned entrepreneurial creatives, and to me that seems like an oxymoron because I know a lot of creative people that have no idea how to do anything or how to set a focus or be disciplined or structured. I feel like a creative always needs sort of a person that's going to, and maybe like you, like a coach, like a consultant that can help them and guide them and give them some processes. Because one thing I discovered as a podcaster, I needed to be very organized. I'm already an organized person, but this made me even more because I created bullet points for everything. I scheduled, my episodes, content, made sure that I had enough of, topics for this, and this. I also have a son who's very creative, and for him, I mean, everything is all up in the air. And that's something that I've kind of learned about creatives. There's so much stuff up in the air. So for you, it's a nice thing for you to come in and kind of help them, guide them, right? And it's part of your consulting, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yeah. One of the talents that I discovered early on, Alicia, about myself is that I'm really good at spotting talent, and I can pinpoint what creatives are going through. Okay, like a little talent scout, something like that. Pretty much, yeah. And I've been really good at that. I remember even locally, I would see, I would see local bands. Yeah, I would see I'm like, that band is gonna blow it up. That band, and not 10 times out of 10 they would blow up because I would see something about the band.
The Simon Cowell of your times.
There you go. I'll take that. The urban Simon Cowell. Yeah,
of your time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I do, and you're right because a lot of creatives struggle with it because we're naturally generalist. We like to do a lot of things. Yeah. And we feel like we can do it all and be everything. The truth is we can't. We can be everything. But sometimes there's a season. Yeah. For certain things for you to focus on. So in regards to the work that I do with podcasting, as you mentioned, Alicia, and I'm glad that you mentioned that to your listeners, is that, you're talking about content planning, yes, looking out, reaching out, our guest outreach, your own branding and marketing,
creating your social media,
being behind the microphone, doing the research,
finding a studio, getting your equipment.
100%. And what happens is when people start podcasts, and what I do is they think that it's just basically getting a recording device and a microphone and saying, hey guys, and post it on social media. So I have a podcast. I'm like, no, when you're creating a podcast, you're creating a platform. You're creating a show. Yeah. And with that show, there's a lot of moving parts that a lot of people don't see that you have to understand. So that's why I'm true. I'm very big on that. I know, you took a lot of the courses and you really had a good understanding, and it seems like you're very naturally organized, right? Yeah.
Naturally very much.
So I think that was your superpower. So whenever it was just basically getting that idea and blend it in.
My problem is being creative. That's my problem. Really? Yeah. Because my side of the brain works better when it's logical and analytical. Okay. Yeah. That's when I'm my happiest, when I'm creating, checklists or, I was a teacher for 17 years. So for me, everything has always been like a lesson plan.
Makes sense.
Yeah, curriculum writing, lesson planning, all that. So for me, being creative and having a little more fun and not taking myself so seriously, that's the part that I need to really work on for myself, because I hold this like a responsibility for my listeners. I need to make sure that whatever I bring to my listeners, it's worthy of them, worthy of us, of the community that I'm building. A lot of the women that listen to me are women in my age group, 25 to 55, and they're, interested in certain things that are important to them, that are, a little bit different in the demo. And am I giving them enough, or am I educating? Am I inspiring? So for me, it's sort of become like a commitment to them, to my audience, right?
Yep.
I don't know if
absolutely. When you're building up a community, you feel like you're held to the fire. Like, okay, I got to show up for my people, because they are expecting you to release a
Exactly.
podcast episode. So have you, through the podcast, Alicia, I'm curious to know, because I've seen you again from the beginning. Has this really helped you spark your creativity?
Yeah, it really has, and it's sort of allowed me to kind of let go a little bit of like there's conversations that I'm starting to bring out about me that I would typically, like I mentioned to you, I'm very private about relationships, but I've been bringing on my husband to talk about relationships and how we've been married a really long time, and how do you keep it hot and heavy? How do you keep it, sexy and fun and adventurous? And so many people want to know about that, but I'm typically a very private girl. I am typically very much I'm very protective of my family and my relationships and my kids. But, they always say, be more authentic, be more vulnerable. So that's the part that this is kind of helping me to be a little bit more, because I'm not very vulnerable. Like nobody will see me cry ever. Like that's just me. Like I'm going to cry in my room under my blankets and nobody's going to look at me. But I understand the idea of being vulnerable.
And I always say, vulnerability is a superpower. And when you lean into your vulnerability, and I think that's the beauty of voice and podcasting, and why people are gravitating towards personal brands behind the microphone, is because personal brands, individuals are speaking and being vulnerable and sharing things that they don't normally share. Now you're having celebrities that are playing in our sandbox, but they're sharing things that they can't share in major TV networks.
Exactly.
And people love that. People love that, being authentic, humanization, which I think, to me, that's my definition of a personal brand. It's humanization of reputation. It's the amplification of self. It's you really opening up and speaking your truth behind a microphone. And I think that's the beauty of podcasting, is that people now are being vulnerable and people accept it and love it.
Right.
And I think that's the part of the reason why it's growing so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's an important platform to inspire and to help people through, even through the pandemic. I think people were tuning into podcasting and audio because they needed something that they can relate to, and they can continue to find some sense in the world and some reason for being, and I think audio has become that. And let's talk a little bit about communities, because that's something that you're really, really devoted to, and something that I see it's a passion for you, is creating communities, online communities. And that's how I met you, through an online community, through the podcast community. And so why is it so important? Why is that such a big part of your life?
It's funny that you're asking me that question, because I was thinking about just the connection, because community has been part of my life for a long time, ever since even in my teenage days, where I was part of breakdancing communities, and when I was indie artist, I would organize events centered around the musicians that were within the genre. And I would put together shows. And I was very big on community. So community, and I've said this term before, community is the new currency. But I think to me, it's the rediscovered currency, meaning that now people are reverting to community. And the brands that get it, the brands that build community on and offline, are the ones that are gonna win. And I believe that, I think what's happened is a lot of brands and podcasters have gotten complacent to the online branding. And I'm like, there's a whole different world. I mean, it's local. Like, you even stepped outside and went local. I'm like, so really get creative and figure out what can you do for your community, in person. How can you bring them people into your ecosystem? And that's been part of my makeup and part of my strategy for a long time, Alicia. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about me bringing people together, like-minded individuals, to give them a platform to share their passion, to also learn, and have that support and accountability. In every event or every community that I've hosted, that I've organized, people always come to me and say, thank you for doing this. Because if it wasn't for this community, I would have quit my podcast a long time ago. As a matter of fact, when I started Pod Houston, about 4 years ago, there was no podcasting community. There was a blogging community. There was a real small YouTube community, but wasn't really consistent. And I was like, where are my podcasters at? Yeah. And I launched my first meetup at Cafe Brazil here in Houston, and I had about 20 people that showed up. And people were saying, when's the next one? And when's the next one? And then now Pod Houston has grown. So to me, again, I think community is such an important part and part of my pedigree. And I don't even want to say, dare I say, strategy, because I don't use it for like any intent to make money or to make gain. I can if I wanted to, but to me, it's like there's something about bringing people that are like, you know what, you're like me, you know, this is for people like us.
Yeah.
And there's something powerful about that.
You know, but one thing, because I was a leader of a community for a while, one thing that I noticed was it's a very lonely place to be a leader of a community, because you will find yourself many times the only person at a meeting. You will find yourself, sending out the messages, hey, come, I've got this, I've got that. And you're offering so much to the community, and some of them won't show up or some of them won't come. And you get so disappointed. You get so disheartened. I remember setting up nice restaurants, nice rooms, making sure that everything was, amazing. And I would only have one person show up. But because my vision and my hope to help somebody was so big that I just kept going and thinking, okay, somebody's going to show up one day. Somebody's going to come one day. But it's a very lonely place. It's a very lonely place to be the leader of a community.
It is, but that audaciousness, that leaning into your leadership is what defines leadership, is showing up. Will you show up even when nobody's there?
Nobody's there. And you kept it going through the COVID. I would notice that you would do a lot of virtual Zooms. And I was like burned out with Zoom. I was burned out within like the first 2 months.
I think a lot of members of our community, like, because we didn't get the attendance like I expected. But I think, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, I just think that people are just done with Zoom.
No, we were burned out. Everybody was doing Zoom for everything. And so I was like, okay, I'll just wait till they do something in person, because I can't be doing the Zoom thing. Yeah. But yeah, for sure. I think, community is so important, and developing a community, it takes time. And I think it's something that you need also support from somebody and other people. And I know that you do have some support from other, I guess, members that come in and help you out. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how you speak on personal branding. And I think that's something that a lot of us in the podcasting world, like we see other podcasters, we see what they're doing, but I don't think we ever really consider that there's like a component in personal branding. So tell me a little bit about that.
I believe, it's always been part of the success of a podcast, but I think even moving onward, and now in 2022, I predict that personal branding is going to be key. Mm-hmm. The ones that really understand personal branding are the ones that are going to be successful at podcasting. What I mean by that is, aside from being vulnerable and showing up consistently and creating great content for your audience, people, and they did a study, and it was recent, and I forgot what the study was. It was a quote too as well. But they're saying that people don't buy from corporations. People buy from personalities, from people. Mm-hmm. So podcasters, which goes back to like embracing your voice, we have to lean even more into our weirdness, into the things that make us unique. Like you have a very, I was listening to your podcast, you have your vibe. You sound different from other podcasters, your energy. And I think, leaning into that a lot more, I think it's going to be very important for podcasters to really embrace that. Simply just not saying, okay, well, I'm going to get behind a microphone and I'm going to share the content and I'm going to teach. It's like, no, but we need some personality. We need some energy, because that's how you're going to build from a personal brand. But as I said earlier, Alicia, again, personal branding is, it's the humanization of your reputation. So displaying more about what you represent, like your values. Okay. Share a little bit more of that on social media. Share about the things that really matter to you, because that way your listeners will be able to connect with you in that deeper way. So when you drop an episode and you mention something like, oh yeah, of course, Alicia is a family person, or she was a teacher, so I think, sharing a little bit more of that.
Yeah. And I noticed that you say that a few times when I was reading on you, and you talk about humanizing the story, and it's a word that pops up a lot for you.
I say that a lot. Yes, I do.
Yeah, you do. But I think it's important that you keep saying it because it helps me to remind myself that I need to humanize every episode that I make, or because I will approach it from a teacher's point of view, and I'm trying to teach something, and then I become very serious and very professorial. I'm like a professor, and I need to step back on that. And so I keep that word in my mind. By the way, you say it all the time, and when you talk on the podcast, the Facebook, you bring it up a lot, and it stays with me because I have to remind myself that everything that I do needs to have that human component. Like I can't be a robot. I can't be
correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. So for listeners who are starting a podcast, or if you are currently podcasting, and I share this with my clients all the time, the ums and the ahs and all, it's okay. It's okay. We're not NPR. We're not robots. If you say, kick ass or curse every now and then,
it's who you are.
It's be who you are, and let that shine, because I think that's what people gravitate. And if you think about like some of the biggest personal brands, from Gary Vaynerchuk in the social media world, to the way even I forgot his name, from Apple.
Apple?
Yes. Elon Musk, Tesla, Steve Jobs. Oh my God.
Steve
How
Jobs.
can I forget? Sorry, guys. Apple, please. All my fans on Apple, please, because I'm a big Apple user.
I was going to say Steve Jobs, but I was like, no, I don't think
my
so.
mind went left, right. But Steve Jobs did a fantastic job. So
he was a master.
It goes back, right? So Jeff Bezos, Amazon, right? Tesla, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Apple. And they all have their own different vibe. Mark Zuckerberg, whenever you hear him speak.
That's true.
So it's very important, and they are who they are. And sometimes people say, well, they're not that really entertaining. It's like, but they are, like, that weirdness is what makes them who they are.
Yes,
and that's what people are attracted to that.
That's exactly what, And so I think about that. Like, I was going to ask you if you have any podcasters that inspire you or that you look to as sort of the paradigm that you want to follow.
Yeah, not so much of I want to follow, but ones that remind me of just the beauty of individuality.
Okay.
Personal branding. I really like, Gary Vaynerchuk I think is a prime example in the social media world. I think the part of the attraction is not what he says; it's who he is.
Right.
Very, very bold, very direct. And I think people like that. Big fan of Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
I think Oprah Winfrey is somebody who builds a personal brand.
Yeah.
And she didn't start that way. It took some time, but she has a personal brand that's very inspiring,
It is. Motivational. It is. And talking about Gary, I remember when I was listening to him, I always thought his audio was just so bad. And then he would also just have like talks and conferences, and that audio, he would just take it and put it in there and didn't even care. I was like, that is like so uniquely him. That it gives you an idea, like, okay, you know what? You can be recording a workshop and you can just plug in the audio and put it in there.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to make it so sit down, record in a microphone. It could be any audio that's out there that you're doing something, like he's doing these conferences and he's just plugging in those audios.
That's it. And and
even if it's just 12 minutes, he's doing for 12 minutes, he's doing that.
And he's a lot of podcast gurus out there will say, oh, you're breaking one of the cardinal sins, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, how dare you, post that audio? And I'm big on audio, and I talk about, at least have a good microphone and make sure that you sound good, like we're sounding now.
Right.
Definitely do that. But there's some times where, let's say we are doing a live show somewhere, and there's some music, there's some loudness in the background, or give a presentation, you upload that. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like a personal brand is being an ambassador to the message, and the message has to be delivered no matter what. And we can't there's some podcast purists out there, and I used to be one back in the day where it's like, it has to be this, and that.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, let's loosen up.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like, let's just deliver great content. Let's show up.
Right.
Let's amplify your personal brand. Let's get good vibes, killer vibes. Let's just be who you are, and let's have great conversations, and then put it out there, and then let the market decide what's good or bad. But you can't tell me that this is, I can't, upload this because it doesn't fit in your framework of what podcasting is not. This is not NPR. This is not, well-produced, narrative storytelling podcasting. There's a space for that, but this is not for that. for that audience.
No, for sure. And I think one thing that I noticed when I was, reading a little bit on this is the idea that that whatever we do, that whatever podcast, if we're doing a podcast, if we're writing a book, if we're blogging, that it's very true to you and who you are and what you're doing, because there's a consistency and people are looking for that consistency.
Right.
They're looking for that personal, because now when I see Gary, I know it's all over the place, but there's nuggets, but that's how Gary's giving it to you, right? So every time you're doing something, you have to be true that it's on brand for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And not just doing it because somebody else is doing it or because you want to copy somebody else's platform or system. It's not going to be authentic to you and to who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. I think that's amazing. So, you shared an article recently, and I read it, and it was really good, talking about leadership and talking about community and how it's lonely at the top, and only a few people sometimes pay attention. I'm paying attention because I like to read and I like to know what's going on in the podcasting world. If I'm going to be a part of it, I want to be in it. I want to know what's going on, and it's an undersaturated market. So it means that there's not enough of us out there yet, and there's not enough content that's being published on a weekly basis. What do you think about that? Do you see that in your own personal field in consulting?
As far as there's not enough.
Yeah, there's not enough people putting out enough content out there. That's what the article was mentioning.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's lack thereof of content. I think the lack of a good quality content.
Okay.
I think one of the things, going back to Alicia, personal branding, personal branding is not posting, pictures of your food and posting pictures of yourself. Posting, to me, personal branding is really, again, it's an extension of your values and what you represent. So can you post a Reels or a TikTok that's sharing what the Vibes by Alicia lifestyle looks like? Can you share, can you give your listeners and your fan base one single message for the day? And I think that it's very important to be able to establish that type of leadership and that type of marketing. Now, to answer your question specifically, as far as why aren't there enough of podcasters or consultants?
Well, the article really mentioned that there's more people wanting to hear more, and we're not giving them enough, basically.
Yeah, they're saying that on an average, an average listener is listening to 7 to 8 episodes. 7 to 8 podcasts now. So people now have a rotation of podcasts, which is interesting. Whereas before it was maybe 1 or 2 podcasts. Now people are if you look at my, feed, I have a few, podcasts that I listen to. So, I think podcasters, it's going to continue to grow. I still think that it's still a baby. If you look at, 4 billion, YouTubers versus podcasting, which I believe has crossed close to 1 million.
Oh, wow.
So it's still kind of a baby in the grand scheme of things in regards to content marketing. So there's still a lot of space. And as you saw the stats there, maybe we can share that with your listeners. Podcast listenership is definitely growing.
I definitely want to share that with my listeners because I definitely want them to know. It says 70% of listeners say they enjoy listening to guest interviews.
Yes.
58% of listeners say they enjoy listening to panel discussions, which, by the way, I love doing panel discussions. It just takes a lot of organizing, but we need to get you on one of them.
You did a great job with that.
Yeah, I love those. Those are amazing, but it takes a lot of work. But we're gonna make it happen. 55% of listeners say they enjoy listening to host banter. That's interesting. I get annoyed with host banter and I skip it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how some people really enjoy it.
People love comedy and love that stuff.
Although I'm a huge Howard Stern fan, and that's all he freaking does.
I was gonna mention Howard Stern as somebody who I look up to. He's I love fantastic interview.
Yeah, and I remember listening to him, and in one of the worst periods of my life, I was teaching, and I was teaching in the worst place in the world, and I hated it. But just getting in the car that morning and just driving and just listening to him just picked me up and made me feel good. And so I think that's the thing that I really want to remember as I'm doing my podcast. I want somebody to kind of click in and say, I just can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
right? Like that's how I feel about him. I can't wait to hear what he's talking about. And the banter, which, I like the banter that he has. It's a little raunchy, but I still love it.
That's Howard Stern for you.
And okay, so more than half of the listeners will listen, 57% will listen to podcast episode multiple times.
Yes.
And so that's going to lead me to ads. And I want to talk to you about monetizing. I want to talk about adding sponsors or Patreon or patrons. I mean, tell me a little bit about that. And do you suggest or do you recommend something like that?
Yeah, I think early on, I was able to monetize my podcast within 6 months through affiliate marketing. So I aligned myself with, it was just one company. It was a hosting company, and it was a web hosting company. And I know my audience, right? They were creative entrepreneurs. They're building online platforms. So I did an affiliate marketing deal with a hosting company and said, hey, listen, if you are, I know that you are building an online brand and you need a website. So if you need a website, head over to hostgator.com / and I would give an affiliate code. And I was making like $150, $200, sometimes $250 a month.
Okay.
Right out the gate. And it was actually within 3 months. I started pulling that lever and I started making money.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was that through affiliate marketing. Now, fast forward to 2021 and 2022 when this comes out. Now there's Patreon and there's a lot of crowdfunding type of things. And I think that's a great way to experiment. I think if you're a podcaster, if you're a creator, now is the time to be experimental. Experiment, try things out. The ones that succeed, Alicia, are the ones that are just speed and execution. Yeah. I think that,
executing is the hardest thing for so many people.
Especially for people like us that
overthink it. Yeah.
But what I've seen even in my clients, and I'm like, why are certain people like crushing it? It's like they have a good podcast too, but why are they crushing it? And why is this person struggling? And I started kind of breaking down and really looking at habits and looking at like just paying attention to what they're doing, people are doing. And I'm like, I get it. Yeah. The ones, and you see this in business too. Yeah. The ones that are successful, whether in business or creating a successful online brand, are the ones that are quick at implementing,
executing,
doing it. And even if they look like a fool, like when they're doing it, the fact that they're willing to execute and implement quickly, they can fail faster and then they can go ahead and shift. And those are the ones that are really moving the needle.
I agree. And it's in business and podcasts and anything that you do in life. It's, one thing that I always talk about in my business episodes is like everybody's always stuck on, the idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. But they never, and the strategy and what they're going to do, but they never execute. Right. They never actually do it. They think about it and they go over it and they, make up more ideas in their head, but then they never execute it. So guess what? If you don't execute it, it doesn't matter if you have that idea in your head.
That's right. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Ready is a decision. It's deciding that, look, I'm going to start. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because to me, what's powerful, Alicia,
for sure,
is not the information, but it's demonstration. Demonstration over information.
I love that.
1,000%.
If you make t-shirts, you have a lot of.
I know I'm dropping some. I don't know if it's the coffee I had earlier or the water.
I love it.
Or maybe this sheet space vibe. Something's happening here. We got this recorded, so I'm about to go back and make t-shirts. But I mean, that's what I'm talking about. But you're right. It goes back to what you're saying. I mean, 1,000%. It's all about just executing.
Right. And so part of it is for me, the next step in my podcast is what is it that I want next? Like, what is it that I want for it to because for me, the hardest thing is the marketing and promoting it. I'm so horrible at self-promotion. Like, it's so hard for me. I'd rather just put the content out and just hope somebody's listening, but that's really stupid. I have to be intentional about promoting it and making sure that it's authentic to me. And honestly, even like if I put it on social media, I look at every single post that gets on my social media. I need to make sure that it's, to me, authentic to me.
Right.
And not just posting it just because I have to post it or, I hate doing that. I hate it.
One of the things that I plan on experimenting with in 2022, because I'm relaunching No Permission Needed, it's going to take a different direction.
Okay, so you're relaunching. All right.
A little exclusive there. It's going to be coming out in February.
Okay.
I don't have a deadline yet, but I'm going to set a deadline pretty soon. So relaunching it.
Okay.
But one of the things that I have been talking to some of my buddies of mine who have been experimenting with to say, hey, you really got to get on this is podcast advertising within the podcast apps. So
Interesting.
yes, you can pay $200-$300, right? It's not a lot. I mean, let's face it, when you are launching any platform, you know, you have to think about you're building a platform here. So invest in sometimes
there's investment that has to be in there always. Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm going to get to. So remind me if I missed this.
Yeah. I'm going to write a note. Yeah.
So podcast advertising is not expensive. I think you can do it on Overcast, and you can go on different categories. So like business, I think a buddy of mine did one on travel. He has a travel podcast, and I think he spent like $250, and now he's at 1 million downloads.
Wow.
So because he just got, advertising, and they started placing his podcast in front of people that love travel. So I think Overcast is one, and I think there's some other ones that are out there. I'll send you the list, but so podcast advertising within podcast apps is kind of a thing that I want to play with, and I've seen some of my friends do that are having some success.
Should we wait until we have the downloads to start looking for sponsors or asking for sponsors to jump on board with us?
That's a great question. Okay, so I have this method that I share with all of my content creators, okay, and even my clients. I think I shared this before with you. It's called the BAM method.
Okay.
Okay, BAM, like BAM. And it stands for brand, audience, monetization. So you do that in that order.
Okay.
And that's how you build a successful brand online. You build brand, which, Vibes by Alicia, you got one.
Building it, working on it.
Right? Now you develop an audience. You can't monetize and make money without an audience.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is these sponsors are going to look at, what do your download numbers look like? Normally, sponsors will look at 30 days. So they'll say, what are your download numbers on a 30-day basis?
Yeah.
And they look at that number, and then they base it on client per acquisition, right? So a buddy of mine has a podcast that's centered around Porsche. So, right, it's a very expensive, Porsche vehicles are very expensive. So, to get, if a client bought something, a Porsche part, it would be very pricey. So they will look at it and be like, okay, cool, I'll pay you $5,000 because if one person buys this product, it's, 10,000 or whatever. And it makes sense, right?
Right.
So they'll look at like how much the product costs or service costs, and then they'll go and look at your overall 30-day period download numbers, and then decide. Okay. Can you go early? Yes. I mean, you did. I mean, you started early on. I think it's because you nailed your brand. You did a fantastic job nailing your brand, conveying the message, and there was a sense of professionalism. Like, you're very professional. So I think that was the attraction, right, of sponsoring, attracting.
Well, yeah, I did. And I tried to create some credibility in what I do. That's like actually giving my sponsors, some sort of, and I give back to them, by the way. I do videos for them. I create content for them. It's not just on the podcast, not just on the description. Like, I'm giving them something, and sharing promo codes, all that sort of thing. And I'm learning as I go along, by the way, because to me, it's not something that comes natural to me, is to ask people to sponsor and to be a part of it and to join in on the journey.
Right. I'll tell you what, though, and for our listeners, if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, I think podcasting is super underrated for marketing and podcast advertising. I think that if I was a local business, right, I would totally go to Apple search engine, look up the podcasts that are centered around my niche, and reach out to them and say, hey, let me pay you $250. You don't have to break the bank, but some money, where you're saying, oh, how many downloads? Cool. You got, 200, 300 targeted listeners that could potentially buy my product. Absolutely. I would go that route versus getting an ad on a local magazine or going on a billboard. Which nobody
even looks at and throws away.
And they're super expensive. Okay. So I just think that now, I think as a business owner, as somebody who's looking for advertising,
so much more sense.
Go to podcasts. Yeah. I think there's such an underrated market there.
Yeah, and that's the conversation that I had with Shavana one day, and she says because people will go back, and if they have an ad and they think about, oh, I do need that, they can always go back and re-listen to it, right, as opposed to when you're watching a commercial on TV and it's just gone. Either you have a DVR, you can go back to it, but it's not there anymore and it's going to be gone.
And that's
the value, the ROI is just so amazing.
It's amazing,
right?
It's evergreen. And not only that, but you pulled up those stats earlier, reading about how what was it, 56% listen to the podcast multiple times.
Yes,
come on now.
Yeah.
I mean that right there
multiple
is
times,
super powerful. Not only that, I think there's a number there, and I forgot what the percentage, Alicia, but I think it's like in the 60s or 70%. Can't think about it right now. It's somewhere on the line, but how podcast listeners are more willing to make a purchase from a podcast host.
Yeah.
And the percentage,
57%.
57.
Podcast listeners are actively listening to ads, support their favorite podcast
That's solid.
hosts.
That is solid.
Agree to listening to ads is important to support their favorite podcast hosts.
That is a big number. I mean, so as which is a reason why a lot of advertisers are pouring billions into podcast advertising, and podcast networks are emerging. Large media companies are emerging. Why? Because now the big dogs are here, and businesses, big companies, small companies are now looking to podcasts to advertise their products and services.
To me, it makes the most sense in the world because honestly, I'm a binger. I love binging on podcasts, and so when I'm on there and I'm listening to something, it stays with me.
Right.
And then I buy something based on that. You know.
Me too.
And I do it, and it's like I'm thinking about it. I leave the podcast episode, and then I'm like, oh, I know there was something on there that I want, and so I always go back and just re-listen. So that's something that people should definitely be considering and just talking about, and just something that that it's a good little nugget of information in your head, because for me, like, that's where I want to go next. It's something that I've really committed to. I've even considered maybe finding somebody to help me find opportunities to be a podcast guest, because also that's another way to promote and to market yourself, I think, right?
No, you're absolutely 100%. Yeah, I think that's another tactic that I share with this.
Let's go back to the conversation of investing.
Investing, okay.
Yeah, because you said you wanted to talk about invest in your podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So
you're serious. You're serious about podcasting. You should be investing in it.
Investing, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. We spend money on it. I pay money for my editor. I pay money for my studio. Like, it's money that you are spending, and you have to be very serious about it.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
I mean, you don't have to, but for me, I will do it because this is important to me.
Here's the thing. Here was the game changer for me, is treat your podcast like a business. And I got that advice from a YouTuber who had a very successful YouTube channel. And I was like, man, you're crushing it. I was looking at his numbers, and he's making, $10,000 a month passively, from YouTube. And I was like, you're crushing it, man. You're doing amazing. He goes, what changed for you? Because I flirt with YouTube. I'm like, I know the platform. I know there's money to be made. I know you could build a real audience there, but what was the game-changing strategy? He was like, man, I stopped looking at it like just me posting videos as a hobby. I looked at it like a business, and every video is my employee.
Oh, interesting. Ooh.
Every video has a purpose. Okay. Every video is going to do something. And guess what? Just like a business, some of those employees ain't going to work out. Some of those may not hit, but there's going to be a few that are going to land. They're going to be rock stars, and those make me money. So I continue to show up and create valuable, high quality videos that are going to serve my community. And when he told me that, and I got to see his numbers and really dissect what he was doing, I'm like, okay, that's dope. Like that's the same thing with podcasting. And I've seen it with my clients, and I've done it myself, that when podcasters invest in coaching, invest in masterminds, invest in themselves like you have, those are the ones that end up winning, period. That's it. I mean, I've seen it 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. And so, I think it's because important. It also keeps you accountable. It holds you accountable because if you're spending money on this and you're spending, you're dedicating your time to it, it really holds you accountable. Yes. I'm not going to waste it. I won't be wasting that money. I won't be wasting that time. I'm not wasting this space. Like, for me, the space here, even, as a member here, I utilize it as much as I can. I bring people in and I do conversations here. And so you do one-on-one coaching. Right. So let's talk a little bit about that. And if you have a promo code that you might want to share, or what you want to do for 2022, I mean, what do you want to offer?
Yeah. So ozealmedia.com is the website.
Okay.
And you can just email me. Just email me. And the course, I don't think I mentioned this yet. I'm actually doing a promo right now.
Yes.
When this comes out, it'll be out. It's called Podcast 7W. So it's podcast coaching, premium 101 podcast coaching with me. If you're local, we can meet, or virtual. It's a 7-week coaching program where I'll take you from idea to completion, launching the podcast, going over my method, the brand, helping you understand your audience and where they're hanging out at, and then giving you a monetizing strategy and a marketing strategy. I feel like there should be another M there. It's a monetizing and the marketing. And I help you from there and showing you all that. So it's much more than just equipment. It's really kind of digging deep and figuring out who you're going to serve, your purpose and your brand. So I have that.
That's really cool.
So I already signed up a few clients. So that's going really,
when
really
does that
well.
start?
The beginning, the new year, January 21st. Yeah. January
and it's
21st.
all on your website, so people
It's
can look
all
it
on
up.
the website. You can just reach out to me.
And if they want to sign up, it's on there.
Let me know you listened. You listened to
listened here.
Alicia's.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll give you a discount for sure.
Very
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. So
Yes.
where else can people find you besides your website? You're on Instagram. You're
Instagram,
on
TikTok. Yeah, I'm trying to do all the things, Alicia.
You got on TikTok before I did.
I
can't.
you got on
I
TikTok?
can't do it. No, I'm still
Okay.
but you're on it. I'm not.
I haven't been. I was active for about 3 weeks, and then now I kind of dropped off. And that's one thing that I do want to share with your listeners. And I want to share with you, Alicia, that one of the things, and we talked about this before we pressed record, that one of the my intentions for 2022 is just one word: simplicity. And I just want to focus on my coaching, one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
Serving Pod Houston and Vid Houston, and continue with organizing events where other people can learn and support each other. And then just being able to focus on my podcast, which is going to be not related to podcasting. It's going to be centered more towards like self-growth. And it's no permission needed. And the tagline is own your zeal. Because I believe that when people live in their zeal, when people own their zeal, they're living a lot of meaningful life. So I'm going to have different topics. So own your vibe. Own your vibe.
I feel
with
like I'm getting an exclusive.
I have not mentioned this to anybody.
I have a feeling it's an exclusive
It's
here.
not a feeling. It's the truth.
I love it.
Own your vibe with Alicia.
Yeah.
Own your health. Own your entrepreneurship. So I'm gonna have different topics, seasonal. Right. I'm gonna do seasonal, 12 episodes, and I'm really, really excited because I've been coaching for the last 2 to 3 years. But I've missed doing this, and I'm looking forward to just being able to share and provide value to my community.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine how that's going to be really impactful and powerful for people who are looking to do that. I get people asking me all the time, like, what should they do? What should they do? I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I could give you a list of things, but it's all over the place.
As far as podcasting,
I should definitely put it down in like a real serious format. And
but it's a lot. But it's a lot. So I get this all the time. I get a lot of DMs like, "Hey, Ozeal, what microphone should I buy?" I'm like, "Bro, that's the wrong question."
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not like we need to go dig deeper into that. But I get it. I mean, there's people out there that are just want to start and just want to just get a microphone. I mean, I get it. I mean, I've been there, done that. But when it comes to podcasting, if you're listening to this, know that there's a lot of moving parts. And whether you get coaching or join a mastermind, find someone who's been doing it, like at least somebody who's been in the trenches, and really take a deep dive of why you're doing it, who you're serving, and what does your strategy look like to sustain that podcast.
That is so important because on difficult times, you'll always go back to your why. When I couldn't find a guest for something, or when I got somebody to cancel me and then I was so disappointed and sad, because I had a why, I was able to push forward and move on because I didn't become obsessed about that person not showing up or that person canceling or somebody doing something, that didn't fulfill a commitment for me. But my why always stays with me. Now, inspiring and teaching is what I want to do.
That's what I was going to ask.
It's to inspire and to teach and to give people those ideas that maybe they can elevate their life. What is it that they still need to move on to the next level?
Why does that matter to you?
It matters to me because I look for that myself. I want to be inspired. I need to see how I can elevate my own life. I feel that if people are not Number one, I think everyone needs to have somebody that they can look up to and look as, inspiration and to hold on to. All of us need something to hold on to. I'm not a religious girl. I don't even go to church, but I have something that I hold on to. I have things that I hold on to, communities that I hold on to, right? That's for me. Listening to the radio, listening to audio is what holds me. It's what pushes me. It's what motivates me to keep going because I see how somebody's doing it. And damn it, if I want to do that too. Wow, I'm inspired. I can inspire somebody. Like that to me is what keeps me going. That's my why. That's my focus, and just being there for someone.
High five. Killer vibes in the house.
I feel like I just had like a therapy session.
That was deep.
I feel like you just gave me like a little therapy session.
Microphone's on fire. That was beautiful, Alicia.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. I've been wanting to have you on. I just needed the right opportunity and the right conversation for us. And I think it was just the type of thing that I feel my audience would definitely love to.
All about divine timing. And it's been a true honor just to be, I can't believe we blew close to an hour.
I know.
This is so much fun.
I think we could talk forever.
We can. And Alicia, I just want to let you and your listeners know, thank you so much for just giving me the space. If you're listening to listen to this podcast episode, and of course for you for giving me the opportunity to share with your audience and just to be across from you and just let you know that once again, I tell you this all the time, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
See your accomplishments.
It's like my godfather.
Godfather. Somebody told me the podfather. Like, that's a big word.
Oh, the podfather. There you go.
I'll take it. But thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And everybody, please follow Ozeal. Go over there and look it up and see what's going on at Instagram. You're very popular on Instagram. On Facebook, you're huge on Facebook.
Ozeal.
Please, go on there. And if you have any other conversations that you want us to have and maybe to talk about, let me know. You guys know how to find me at Vibes by Alicia on Instagram. You can also find me at my personal account at think_chick. And I can't wait for you all to let me know what you're thinking. Send me some feedback and send me some ratings, guys. I would love to hear it. Thanks so much. Thanks, Ozeal.